Hi, really appreciate everyone to join us on this special episode. So we're gonna talk about a review of 2020 and the outlook of 2021. Especially given this year has been so hard on everyone, given the pandemic situation, and hopefully it's getting better. And I'll just start with my self-introduction. My name is Sierra Sun. I'm the Vice President of Global Business and Markets at Huobi Group. So I oversee the institutional business, business development, partnership, and also global marketing. And we have three very, very special guests today. We have Professor Chen, who is the Chair Professor of Finance and Director of Asia Global Institute of HKU. And we have Mr. Wang, who is the China CEO of Euromoney Institutional Investor. And we have Mr. Keller, who is the initiative lead at World Economic Forum. So first, I'll let you guys do a round of self-introduction and maybe share a little bit of things that you want to share with our audience.
Hi, this is Zhiwu Chen, Chen Zhiwu. I'm a professor of finance and economics at the University of Hong Kong. I've been working on and doing research on finance, the history of civilizations, and many other things. I'm glad to be here.
Very glad to have you here, Professor Chen. And then Mr. Wang.
Thanks, Sharon. My name is Romeo Wang. I'm the China CEO for Euromoney Institutional Investor. This is a London Stock Exchange listed company. We are basically a B2B service company for the whole financial community. So we have media, a bunch of publications. We have financial information service. We provide the data in the commodity market. And also we run a lot of conference and training business. I'm so glad to join this panel, but especially I can in the same session with Professor Chen, which I'm not kind of fan. I read quite a lot of articles. So good to join here.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you, Romeo. So we have Huobi Group have a lot of partnership going on with Euromoney, and we had a lot of panels and discussions already before, and glad to have you here, Romeo. And then Mr. Keller.
Yeah, very nice to meet everybody. My name is Keller. I'm with an organization called the World Economic Forum. The forum is a platform, a global platform, where stakeholders from the private sector, the public sector, and civil society come together to tackle the big issues that no group can really solve for by themselves. We are probably best known for an annual meeting that we host every year in Davos. I'm here in the Beijing office of the forum, and I look at the future of financial services in China. So I've worked with a lot of financial institutions here in the region, but also some of the global partners to better understand what changes is the Chinese financial system going through at the moment, and what will the future look like. And 2020 has certainly been a very interesting year to be on the ground. My first year in China for the forum, and it was very, very interesting. So looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, really glad to have you, and we really look forward to have more in-depth partnership with the World Economic Forum. And yeah, last year I was at Davos too, and yeah, very sad that this year it can't happen, but look forward to seeing you guys maybe in next year's Davos. Okay, so let's get started. So in 2020, the global COVID-19 situation really reshaped international politics, economy, and also the society in general. And most major economies fell into recession. And the pandemic has really hit businesses and established business models hard. But with these challenges come opportunities. The pandemic gave birth to new strategies, and business and individuals found ways to survive. So one area is the technological push in the field of industrial internet. So many feel that the technological will lead the acceleration of the digital economy and inject the new momentum of sustainable growth into global economy. So looking ahead to 2021, the impact of the pandemic on the global economy will continue. So to cope with it, how should enterprise carry out digital transformation, and what role will technologies such as blockchain play in the transformation process, and how will the relationship between regulation and innovation develop? So today, we'll have continued discussion about all of these topics. My first question is, what has the global pandemic done in terms of a mind shift change when it comes to commerce and e-commerce? So for example, we have seen working from home becoming the norm and very viable, but what other changes in the way the world works have you noted, primarily related to digitalization?
For the digitalization, everyone just be part of this. In modern life, I would say the massive majority has been part of it, just more or less. And maybe thousands example we can take. Probably I just use Euromoney some of the business, maybe like also like the World Econ Forum. We have a lot of conference just like today. We are not physically together. We spread out in different major cities. See, I like the word you're thinking. It's like mind shifting. In the past, we have many real events physically people like to meet. And we just think digital is not that critical to events. It's good to have, but it's not critical to make it happen because people still want to fly over to meet in person. That makes sense. But now many of the countries doesn't allow such a big gathering. So no way we can have these things. Now then we start in, I think it's in March and April when we face the challenge, how we can get through it. But amazing, I would say maybe we just not really look at technology. A lot of technology offering was there, but we just thinking our delegates that time is not ready for this. They think it's the reality already is satisfied what they need. But now we embrace the technology, use many of the new platform, technology based. But it's really amazing the delegates experience. Yes, we see I was mostly was satisfied. And the good part is they think the digitalization technology really can help them do something more than the past because it's not just talking to 200 people, 500 people. It's like 5,000 with the technology and can reach out more people. The border was broken. And you can read from the data what's the response, how longer people stay with you. So a lot of analysis you can do, you can improve the efficiency. So just use this industry as an example. Even I think it's even after the post COVID, I was think the industry will be changing, will be hybrid. I make a bold guess. It's not just a physical, but it will be physical plus digital. And digital, it's really critical things in this. I just want to make one specific example to share with it, start with it, and leave more example for the other guests.
So I think 2020, this year, has been a very interesting discovery process for many people. Of course, I have to say that many people, especially families, relatives, and their loved ones, suffered a lot from the pandemic. But on the other hand, people who have survived may have discovered many things that they would never have been able to discover. First, the way of living through a digital virtual space. I especially think most people never imagined that they would have to live in a very small hotel room for 14 days in a quarantine. So that kind of discovery and new experience should be refreshing in many ways. One of the implications is that with the help of social media and other digital forms of connectivity, almost everyone has managed to do it. So that's a very new experience, new discovery about the way of living in isolation, but connected digitally. But I think in terms of the way of working and transacting, that's another major transformation that this year 2020 has brought about, especially I guess the importance of Bitcoin has been raised as a result of this and other digital forms of payment or digital currencies have become such a household standard that now almost everyone has to be very familiar with digital forms of currency. No longer do people need to always have to carry a lot of paper cash at home. So that's a new way of transacting and working with each other in a very, again, digitally connected way. So this is the second major change. I know that, when I was at Yale, I had some older colleagues who are still professors at Yale who would not be able to use email or a mobile phone. I think this year they were all kind of forced to have to live in a digital way, even though that may not be something comfortable for many 70 some years olds, 80 some years olds. But I think many of them managed to still learn how to do it. But these two changes in working and living have many other implications. One is, as I just mentioned, buying and selling things now has to be done more digitally in the virtual space. So this has made the winner take all phenomena sort of reach a totally new level because, just as a concrete example, in Beijing, there may be a physical restaurant or store that everyone in Beijing loved. But no matter how hard that physical store can work and deliver to attract many, many residents from Beijing. After all, the Beijing resident population is about 25 million people. So no matter how hard that store would work, the transaction volume is actually very much bound. But on the other hand, now in the virtual digital space, a successful store based physically in Beijing or anywhere else on earth can actually get customers not just from all over China, but also all over the world. So that makes the successful few, globally speaking, in every industry now able to have access to almost like 6 billion potential customers around the world. So that really makes the winner take all phenomena reach a totally unprecedented level. So this has a lot of implications for income distribution, inequality, in wealth, in income, and social status. So I think human societies will have to deal with this, but before we know how to deal with it, such winner-take-all related implications for inequality are really, really very huge. So this is the new challenge coming out of this year. And secondly, another challenge coming out of this year is for investors. How should they invest their money? It used to be that, as a finance professor, I've taught MBA students for many, many years, for more than 30 years. I always emphasize in every class that diversification, investing across all kinds of stocks, bonds, and other types of securities in order to minimize risk. But now in this winner-take-all world made possible by the digitization of almost everything, maybe some higher level of concentration should be optimal, because every industry can only accommodate like 2 or 3 big successful players around the world, and then everyone else has to be squeezed out. So given that, you don't want to necessarily take positions in hundreds, if not thousands of investment positions. So that's sort of another implication. And finally, I also want to say that there are many challenges as well. For example, now we all live in and spend so much time every day in the digital world, especially in social media, as well as using different digital currencies to buy things. So trust is the major new challenge. I know blockchain tries to solve this problem of trust and default and so on. But since, as we know in social media now, fake news and fake stories and many other things that are not true can be easily passed around among millions of people. And likewise, in terms of currencies of payments, even though it's very convenient to use Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies, maybe very much established digital currencies as well. But at the same time, it's also now easier for some people to create fake currencies and fake things and cheat on many millions of people. So the challenge of trust, or the lack thereof, is a new thing that people have to deal with, have to find a solution to, in order to make this newly digitized way of life and way of work really proceed, without causing a lot of doubt or suspicion.
The challenge of going last is like you cannot add too many new points. But let me respond to some of the dynamics that were raised. Romeo said a lot of the technology was there already before the crisis, right? And I think while we saw a lot of new stuff in 2020, like here in China, of course, the use of QR codes to validate your health status, for example, we probably saw more acceleration of what was already there than really the introduction of new features. And I think the more interesting case is looking a bit more towards Europe and North America and a bit out of Asia, because Asia was very advanced already in the uptake in the usage of digital tools. Europe and North America were more slow to adopt. And when you then look at the acceleration pace there, then you get a good story of what 2020 was really about. And a lot of that stuff, of course, will stick after the crisis, right? Once people use digital payments, they're very unlikely to go back to writing paper checks or cash. The other thing I think that's very important is what Professor Chen just mentioned is winner takes all dynamic, right? And he talked about that in the context of e-commerce, but you also see it in financial services. What we're seeing at the moment, both on the fintech side and on the incumbent side, is that the large institutions are much better positioned to take advantage of this environment than the smaller ones. And that's going to create challenges, right? It's going to create challenges around innovation. It creates challenges around monopoly dynamics, etc. And particularly here in China, we saw some of these challenges come to the surface over the past couple. I'm a bit less optimistic about the adoption of certain parts of the population. Professor Chen, you mentioned your colleagues at Yale who weren't using email in the past, and this year they have to. I don't know about email, but certainly when it comes to the usage of financial services, I think there is parts of the population who continue to struggle with using digital means, right? And particularly the elderly. And there we have to be very careful that this new hooray about the adoption and usage of digital services doesn't disenfranchise a certain part of the population that simply doesn't know or doesn't have the ability to adopt. And that's true in financial services, it's true in the adoption of other parts of digital delivery mechanisms. And it's not only the elderly, it's also those who don't have the financial means to have a advanced cell phone or computer, right? We see that in education. Because we have made great progress in delivering education remotely, but there is kids out there who haven't participated in any sort of educational exercise over the past couple of months just because they don't have the hardware infrastructure to do that. And we need to be careful that we don't leave out a certain part of the population which just doesn't have the means to adopt. On the last point you raised, Professor, about diversification, I couldn't agree more. We at the forum here have done a lot of work around the future of asset management here in China and everything that's happening around pension reform, about savings, moving into capital markets and all the opportunities that creates. And what we have always stressed is that the slow opening of the Chinese financial markets, of course, provides important mechanism for Chinese investors to diversify their holdings away from real estate, traditional bank savings, into a portfolio that is better suited to match the needs of a society that will live much longer, etc. Of course, the reverse is also true. So while I agree with you that we need to do a better job and focus on those industries that are best positioned to take advantage of this new environment, I think diversification remains critically important geographically. And what we're probably going to see as a result of this year is certain parts of the world developing and evolving at very different speeds and moving in different realities. And that's going to be a challenge, right? What we're seeing here in Asia at the moment is very different from what we're seeing in Europe and in North America. And in that sense, it's not only the trajectory of the pandemic, it's of course the geopolitics playing out, and those are here to stay even after this pandemic is solved for. And what that means is that as an investor, of course, you want to be as broadly diversified as possible and overcome your home market bias, because the world that we're moving into is one where you just don't know where the opportunities are going to be, where growth is going to be. We've entered a very new paradigm of monetary policy. Most investors don't really know how to deal with it and how to get their heads around that. And so if you have that uncertainty, you want to be very, very diversified geographically, and then you probably want to pick the winners in a more vertical sense in your industry. So those are just some responses to what was said earlier. I think for the next round of questions, I'm trying to go earlier so I can introduce some new thoughts.
Can I follow on Kai's second to last point about inclusive growth and inequality implications? I know it has been popular among commentators and forum participants to call for reducing the digital divide. But on the other hand, I think the recent lessons from the pandemic in 2020 shows that no matter what policymakers and where intentioned academics would like to do or push, there are always people in North Dakota or South Dakota or Alabama who will say, I have my own liberty and my own freedom of choice. Even with the upcoming supply of vaccines, about half of Americans who were surveyed say they are not going to adopt any vaccine. So, I mean, just for the same reason, no one wanted to adopt new technologies or using social media. There are many people who understandably want to have that freedom. So if that's the case, then no matter what where intentions intellectuals and policymakers try to do, those who refuse to take advantage of new technologies, whether it's digital or otherwise, they're going to stay on the fringe, and then the rest of the more progressive population will move on, adopting new technologies and so on. So this is why, over the last 10,000 years, some archaeologists now show that every time when there was a major technological advancement in human history, it led to a higher inequality in wealth and income. For the exact same reason, because there are always people who don't want to learn new things or adapt to the new way of life, new way of work, and then they are bound to be left behind, no matter what others try to do or how hard others try. So I think the digital divide will exist. I mean, that's just a way of life, and unless governments around the world would really force everyone to have to adopt an iPhone or whatever social media and digital payment forms. Otherwise, the digital divide will only get worse as more and more apps become available. So the elderly and some less educated and people who are in villages in Northern America or South America and other parts of the world, they will choose to be left out. So I'm somewhat pessimistic on this front, like in terms of what the future wealth distribution will look like. It's not going to look better. It's going to get worse.
So very, very good points. And Kai did a good job for me already summarizing our guests' points. And so I wanted to add on a little bit on the digital cash part of the digitalization process. So this year, after the pandemic, we saw a major, process of the digital cash involvement around the world, with China's DSAP, and also a lot of the other central banks announcing that they're now looking into digital cash in their local countries and getting support and regulations from local countries and governments. We're seeing that cryptocurrency and digital cash has positioned themselves very well, and the notion of being less physically connected and more digitally connected is entirely normal and getting more widely accepted. And I remember last year during the whole Davos time when I was there, I had a session with UNICEF, and I believe the World Economic Forum was there also. We were talking about fundraising in fragile markets and how digital assets, it's so naturally designed perfectly good for fundraising in those areas, and how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency with no one central government regulation or control is good for solving all the trust issue and making all of the transactions on chain and all transparent and open. It's very good and natural for fundraising in fragile markets and also for charity work. And I believe that this post COVID-19 situation world will increasingly be digital.